So, of course, that beautiful pumping sound is the sound of music being ducked under a kick drum, or to use a popular phrase, sidechain compression. It's entirely made in this case with hardware, no plugins, no DAW. So I suppose the question is, which compressor am I using? Well, don't tell anyone, but I'm not using a compressor. Why I'm not using a compressor and what I'm using instead is the subject of this video, and thanks very much to the person in the comments who suggested I make it. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I dial in the settings, the tricks, there's a few tricks and so on. And at the end of this video, I'll tell you the best way of getting the same ducking effect in any DAW, which is also not to use a compressor. Please like and subscribe. This is a very new channel. I'm less than 4 weeks in. I'd really appreciate it. So, if I'm not using a compressor, what am I using? Well, I'm using this. Yeah, okay, that's a graphic because my actual units are racked up behind me. But this or these are the truly legendary, and you can't say that about many pieces of audio gear, truly legendary Drawmer DS201 dual channel gate. Bit of a mouthful. I'm going to call it the Drawmer. And I've got 3 of them. And this video is the first of 3 very sincere video love letters to this unit that I'm making. It's a wonderful piece of kit. And each of these videos I'm going to focus on a different effect. This one is all about ducking. I'm going to leave the history of the unit and its genius creator, Ivor Drawmer, to the second video, which is about what I guess this unit is most famous for, which is gating. But let's just start having a look at it. It kind of looks a bit like a compressor because it's got controls like threshold, attack, hold's a bit weird, decay, range. But there's no ratio control. And there's no knee. So how does it work? Well, the best way to explain how it works is just to run audio through it, which I'm going to do like this. There is just a 4-on-the-floor kick drum at 128 beats per minute. The unit's in bypass mode, or I'll put it in bypass mode now. But you can still see lights flashing in time with the kick drum. That's because I'm routing the audio of the kick through the key source, which I've got set to external. Well, actually, I'm not. And here's the first secret. I'm not routing the kick at all. I could route the kick, but better is what I'm doing, which is I'm routing a short pulse, actually short square wave, which hits every time the kick hits. And if we put it into key listen mode, we can hear what that sounds like. That's what it sounds like. Why am I doing that? All will become clear when we look at the controls. But if you want to guess, this pulse is a lot shorter and a lot snappier than that lovely 909 kick, which is a bit round. Now, I got the unit in duck mode. It's got 2 modes, gate and duck, and it's in duck mode. And what that means is that these controls, which I'm going to call the envelope controls, attack, hold, decay, they tell the unit how much to duck the audio that's been routed through it every time it gets triggered by the key. Attack is obviously how fast it ducks. For ducking, you want that as fast as possible. Hold is, yeah, how long it holds on for. And decay is the time taken to release the ducking. And you don't need a knee because you want it to kick in as quick as possible. And you don't need a ratio because you need to just clamp down as quick as possible. Range, which is how much it's being ducked, you end up using actually like a kind of a blend control. This unit's got a maximum of 80 dB of ducking, or minus 80 if you like, and that effectively is everything being turned all the way down. Fun fact, all analog compressors actually have a maximum range. The famous SSL compressor's got a range of about 70. Everyone thinks it clamps down to 0, but it doesn't. So do consoles. Anyway, let's run some sound through it. Here is some sound. Okay. We're in bypass. I'm going to put it out of bypass. And now, as I dial the range back, you can hear it duck. Take the decay off. Open the filter. So you shape the envelope like this. You have the attack as fast as possible, then you kind of strike a balance between hold, there you go, and decay, depending on the speed of the track and the feel. And this, of course, is why it's so much better to use a short pulse than the long kick drum, because you need to get out of the way, and then you get all of your control from the hold and the decay, as opposed to it thinking, well, there you go, your hold's short, but this kick drum's still hanging around. Kick drums are way too long. So let's put some more parts back in. That's a sub bass done on the Model D. Similar thing. Tune it in a little bit. Okay, now put some hats and claps which are not being ducked. But here's one last trick. Another reason why I'm using the pulse as opposed to the kick is that I've now got separate control. So for example, I can turn off the ducking like this. Mute the kick. And now put the ducking back in without the kick. And I've just got complete control. So that, viewers, is how you do it properly. Go on to a different sequence. Now, I've got... God, that sounds so dramatic with this music, doesn't it? This is some synthwave I put together specifically for this demo. I've got a matrix of 3 of these. The patching is a bit hairy. It's not hard, but if you do get these, you absolutely have to use them in a patch bay, because you can't be rooting around the back of them. And every single one of these has got in and out for each channel, and they're dual channel. And it's got the sidechain or key in that, so you need like 6 patch sleeves for every single one of these. Before you know where you are, you've taken up 18 ins and outs on your patch bay with these 3 units. But what a sound! Let's just listen to this for a minute. It's incredible, right? All done in hardware. I'm routing the ARPs through, I'm using the neutron as the resonant filter. What a sound. solo some of this stuff up. You get full marks if you recognize what synth this bass sound is being made for. It's a famous Yamaha FM synth, and it's right down there. It's a terrible synth, but it does one sound better than anything else, and it's this sound. And if you want a clue, it's been cropping up a lot lately. So that's how you do it. Now, how do you do it in the DAW? Well, I'll tell you how you don't do it in the DAW. Even if you've got all of this equipment, when it comes to writing and producing, I rig all of this stuff up. I do some ducking, I do some gating, put loads of stuff through my Drawmers. And then when I track it in, I do two things. One, I absolutely make sure I am tracking the pulse, which I'm using to trigger it. So I actually record an audio track with the pulses on it. Then, if I'm doing a gated part, and I know it's the second video, I do capture the gated synth. But of course, if I make a mistake, I can always redo it, right? I'll put it onto a better sequence. However, if I'm talking about doing ducking, I do not take the ducking part. I don't track it in. I put it on bypass, and then I do ducking in the DAW. There's a few reasons for that, and the two reasons are these. Firstly, ducking is very difficult to get exactly right. You're constantly tweaking parameters because you want to get that pumping effect. You just got to get the rhythm and the vibe exactly right. And it's almost every time you add another percussion part, you change the feel, you kind of need to tweak the envelope a little bit. So it's actually quite difficult to get right. The second thing, and this is equally important, is that actually ducking works fine in the DAW, provided that you do it the right way. And the right way is not to use a compressor with a sidechain. If you did that, you would still not be feeding it the kick drum, but feeding it a pulse. The right way of doing it is to use a dedicated envelope shaper. Now, I'm not talking about all ducking. There are some kinds of ducking, like maybe DSing or, ducking underneath the vocal, which you should do using a compressor or using a multiband or something like that. But for this kind of ducking sound, use an envelope shaper. The envelope shaper that everyone used to use was called LFO Tool, and it was by Steve Dudar of X-Fair Records, great friend of deadmau5, and wrote Serum and some other amazing tools. And you can just set that onto a cycle, or you can trigger it by sending it a MIDI note. The sort of popular choice for a while has actually been to not use LFO Tool, but to use Shaperbox by Cable Guys. Shaperbox does some things that I don't use it for, like you can kind of draw in envelopes for filters and stuff. It's kind of great, but that's not what we're talking about. The main thing that Shaperbox does, which I think is really cool, is you can send it audio, which it will interpret just as a single trigger. So you can send it your kick drum, but it doesn't use the kick drum to sort of change the envelope. It just uses that to set the trigger. You can't do that on LFO Tool, and it's kind of pretty cool. And then the right way of using these tools anyway is to get a full duck and then use the blend control to, so you blend it 80% or 10%. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We're using, attack, hold, and decay. And that's essentially what you're kind of doing. You're doing one of these envelope shape plugins. You're going to have it attack as fast as possible, then hold, and then release up. And then you blend in. And you could duck some things that you might be surprised at. So if anyone watching knows, is it called Don't Start Now or Don't Stop Now by Dua Lipa? That Dua Lipa track anyway. And it was produced by Ian Kirkpatrick. He didn't mix it, but he produced it. and he did a very elaborate job on the production. And the vocal, he essentially sidechains off the kick using shaper box with a volume shape, and he does that throughout the entire vocal with only like about 10% on, but it's actually there, and he uses it, he talks about it, a way of sort of gluing the vocal with the music. But of course that incredibly famous effect where she sounds breathless in the chorus is because the shaper box is kicking in at like 90%, even then not dialed up to the max. But that's the right way of doing envelope shaping in the DAW. You use the blend control. Now, if you didn't have an envelope shaper, or for some reason you really wanted to use a sidechain compressor because, I don't know, that's just who you are and it's your religion. Okay, well, you do it the same way. Do not send the kick, send a pulse on a separate track that you call the sidechain key or something. Then you get it to duck fully, so the shortest attack you can get without hearing a click, and sometimes even if you hear a click it doesn't really matter, does it, because it's under a kick drum, so don't oversweat that. Short attack, and then just tune the release so it's in time, and then you use the blend control. So assuming it's got a blend. So a lot of you guys might be using Ableton, for example. Don't use the glue compressor, just use the stock Ableton compressor. Get it to fully duck and then release in time. So it's the most kind of sarcastically heavy ducking, pumping that you can get, and then use the blend control to get the right amount. The other thing that a lot of people do in the DAW, which I haven't really done here, is that they'll bus all of their instruments to a kind of a sidechain bus, including effects like reverbs, and then they'll have them all duck together. I'm doing it slightly differently because I actually want to tune slightly different envelopes for these things, and I don't think it sounds unglued. I have got essentially some serial reverbs. So my pad has got reverb on it. Some of my other sounds have got reverb on them. And let's just hear that first section in all of its glory again. Here we go. So that stereo pad's got reverb on it that's being ducked. Beautiful. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.